Now, Tory Lanez is now saying that he's in serious danger behind bars. And when you connect this new situation to everything that's already happened to him, the story kind of gets a little dark. This is not just another random Tory Lanez update. This is not just about him complaining from prison. According to some recent reports, Tory's asking a federal judge to protect him from a prison guard because he believes this guard could put him in harm's way. Now, the reason that is so serious is because Tory was actually, I'm sure a lot of you guys know, but he was actually stabbed behind bars last year. So he literally almost lost his life once. And for that particular situation, he actually filed a massive lawsuit against the prison system, which was around 100 million. And now he's basically saying he fears something could happen once again. Whether you support Tory Lanez or not, this situation is really serious. So let's talk a little more about this, okay? Now, this is the scoop. Tory basically fears that this guard could move him into a dangerous area of the prison. And his legal team is claiming threats, intimidation, harassment, and safety concerns. And this is really serious because of what he went through last year with the stabbing. So last year, like some of you guys might know, in 2025, right? Last year, Tory almost lost his life after this very horrible stabbing that he went through. And according to reports, and actually according to himself as well, he was stabbed around 16 times while in prison. Or actually, it was 17 times, Tory Lanez said. So this was not like some small incident. This was a very serious attack that could have literally killed him. So now we're in a position where he's saying that he fears being put in a position where his life is in harm's way. So this right here is not a regular prison complaint. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Tory Lanez is a very high profile person who is behind bars. Now, we're not saying that the court has already proved that every claim that he's making is true. I don't really know that. And I don't really know if a lot of this stuff that Tory is saying about this particular guard, we don't know who that is, if it's even true. But his legal team, they're making these claims. And I don't think they would do it for no reason. And because he was already attacked once, it's kind of hard to ignore this. Now, some of these documents basically say that Tory wants court protection from this particular prison guard. And from Tory's perspective, this is not something he's just making up, because he had very, very serious physical injuries from that stabbing in 2025. He doesn't want the same thing to happen again. And that's what makes this report so serious. But let's do this actually. Let's go back to 2025, last year, when Tory was stabbed. It happened sometime into his sentence, and he was stabbed around 16 or 17 times and suffered very serious injuries. And when Tory spoke to NBC News, he described it in his own words and said that he almost lost his life. So this was not like some minor prison fight. He was attacked. So it was a very traumatic near-death experience for him. And then after that attack, he filed this $100 million lawsuit against California prison officials. And his lawsuit basically claims that officials failed to protect him and that he should have never been placed in a situation where something like that could happen. I agree with him. Now, whether that lawsuit is successful or not, that's a whole nother legal question, right? But the story Tory Lanez is telling here is that he believes the prison system failed him once, and now he is worried it could happen once again. And keep in mind, he's not saying, hey, I don't like this guard. He's saying, I fear this person could put me in harm's way. That's a very serious allegation right there. And that's why I say that I don't think this is coming from nowhere. And so this entire situation right here, this legal situation, or should I say safety concern that Tory is currently in, is basically a part of a bigger pattern where Tory's entire prison situation is getting way more serious. I mean, first he gets convicted, then he gets sentenced, then he gets stabbed, then he sues the prison system, then his appeal gets denied. Then the California Supreme Court reportedly declines to review his case. Then he does an interview from behind bars saying he believes he was originally wrongfully convicted, and now he's asking a judge to protect him from this prison guard. I'm wondering what specifically that this person is doing to him, because especially being so high profile behind bars, I can't even imagine what they're putting him through. I mean, keep in mind, when you have so much money, especially like Tory Lanez, he's a very successful guy, even from behind bars. He's an earner. I'm just speculating here, but maybe he could be getting extorted. They could try to get some money out of him. And then now he's in a position where these prison guards, they have all this power over him, because when you're in prison, right, you basically belong to the state during that sentence. And so they have all this power over him. And for the time being, he has to answer to these demands and to these people, right?
Tonight, rapper Tory Lanez breaking his silence in his first ever broadcast interview from behind bars since being found guilty of shooting Grammy winner Megan Thee Stallion in the foot outside a party in 2020.
I've never been violent towards a woman. I would never hit a woman, let alone shoot a woman.
Now, in the interview that Tory Lanez did, he actually broke his silence and continued to deny that he shot Megan Thee Stallion. He said that he's never been violent toward a woman and that he would never hit a woman, let alone shoot her.
The amount of new evidence that has emerged since that trial, almost lost my life. Connotation that, like, I share this.
If you could say something to Megan Thee Stallion today, what would it be?
I think that I wouldn't say something directly to her. I would like that moment to happen in person. We've both.
Very mature response. I mean, he could have said a lot of stuff. Obviously, he's not going to say stuff. But then again, keep in mind, Tory's already behind bars. So whatever he says about Megan is not really going to help his situation. Or actually, I guess you could say that, of course, it would, because at the same time, he's still fighting this case, right? So you do probably want to make sure that you present yourself in the best way. But at the same time, that was a very mature response. He didn't say nothing about her publicly. And again, I thought that was mature.
Gone through a lot. There's this connotation that like I share this hatred for her, but I don't. I genuinely passed that. I'm at a place of healing in my life. I'm at a place of taking accountability for the things that I did wrong. And when I talk about my case, I don't want it to be taken as me coming at her, because it's not that. I'm just asking for somebody in the system to look at my case and look at the evidence and ask if this was fair.
And to be fair, he's not even making it about her. He's saying this has nothing to do with her. At the end of the day, the guy's locked up. He got a sentence of 10 years, okay? And so he's focused on his case. Tory also talked about how he believes the public has a major misconception about him. He basically said he feels like he was turned into a monster in the public eye and became a symbol in a bigger conversation about protecting black women. Now, that's obviously a sensitive thing to talk about because Megan has her side, and I feel like it's fair. She has her side, whatever. The jury reached a guilty verdict, and Tory was convicted. So whatever Tory is saying, that's his opinion, right? But I also feel like it's fair to bring up what he has to say. I mean, at the end of the day, he's serving this prison sentence. He's behind bars. That doesn't mean that he should stop fighting for himself and stop vouching for himself. Also, he was saying that he doesn't see himself as someone who would commit the crime he was convicted of. He sees himself as someone who was wrongfully convicted and misunderstood. And that obviously explains why he's still fighting this case and everything that's going on so aggressively.
Lanez declined to testify during his 2022 trial.
Do you regret not taking the stand?
I think if I would have taken the stand, the verdict would have definitely been very different.
And then Tory also spoke about how he regrets not taking a stand during his trial, and that he believes that if he had taken the stand, the verdict would have been very different. And that is a huge statement right there, because during the trial, Tory did not testify. The jury heard the evidence, they heard Megan's testimony, heard the witness testimony, and ultimately found him guilty. But now Tory is saying that if he had personally told his side under oath, he believes things could have gone differently. That doesn't mean the conviction is automatically wrong, but it does show where Tory's mind is at. He feels like the public never got to hear him fully explain himself in court. And when you combine that with everything else he's saying now, you get a picture of someone who believes he's not only physically unsafe, but also legally wronged. Now let's talk about the appeal, because this is very important as well. Tory Lanez's appeal was denied in November 2025. A California appellate, is that how you say it? Appellate? I don't know. Y'all let me know, please, if I'm saying it incorrectly. A California appellate court confirmed his conviction on the 3 felony counts from the Megan Thee Stallion shooting case. That means the appeal court did not overturn the guilty verdict. So as of right now, the conviction still stands and Tory is still serving his 10-year sentence. Now, Tory also spoke about how his legal team is still planning to keep fighting for him, rightfully so, and that there's a bunch of newly discovered evidence that they're planning to file with some appeals. And one of the things his team pointed to was medical records connected to the Megan Thee Stallion case. They claimed those records were not provided during the trial and argued that this may have affected how they could question doctors or challenge parts of the case.
The rapper's legal team filed an appeal, which was denied in November, but his team is continuing to fight, with plans to file multiple appeals next week, this time with the California Supreme Court, in one claiming newly discovered evidence that they weren't provided during Lanez's 2022 trial, including hundreds of pages of medical records for Megan Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete.
But here's the important part. NBC News also reported that in the appeal that was denied, the court already addressed the fragment issue and ruled that the surgeon's testimony was more than sufficient to prove great bodily harm.
But in the appeal denied in November, the court did address the fragments, ruling that the surgeon's testimony was, quote, more than sufficient to prove great bodily injury on Pete. Proving something like this on appeal is tough.
So Tory's team is still fighting, but the legal road is obviously very difficult here. Appeals in general, they're just not very easy. It's not enough to say, we found something new. You generally have to show that the alleged issue could have realistically changed the outcome of the trial. And that is a very hard thing. That is why legal experts often say appeals are an uphill battle. And I'm sure that they're going to try other legal avenues But as of right now, his conviction still stands, as we know right now.
Tory Lanez is also seeking a pardon from Governor Gavin Newsom.
That's right. His legal team has filed the necessary paperwork, and it is before the governor now. So they're seeking either a pardon where his criminal record will be wiped clean, he would be released from prison, or to have his sentence commuted, meaning that the time he has served is sufficient, and release him, but that doesn't change his criminal record.
There's also the pardon and commutation angle. Tory's legal team has filed paperwork seeking either a pardon or a commutation from California Governor Gavin Newsom. Now there's two things here, a pardon and a commutation, and they're both forms of clemency, but they're not the same thing. A commutation would reduce or potentially end Tory's prison sentence, but it would not overturn the actual conviction. And then a pardon can provide relief from punishment and restore certain civic rights, but it does not automatically overturn the conviction or erase it from the record. Either way, there's no guarantee that the governor, right, Newsom, will grant either request. We just don't know that yet. So there's a few different fights happening here in this case, right? One fight is through the courts, where Tory's team has been trying to challenge the conviction. The other fight is through the governor, where Tory's team is asking for this clemency. And this is why Tory's situation is still very complex and layered. He's not just sitting in prison waiting for time to pass. His team is fighting in multiple directions. I mean, they're fighting this conviction still. And they're, of course, suing over the prison attack. And now they're asking for protection from a prison guard. So Tory Lanez is literally in serious danger, but he's also in a very serious legal fight. And of course, the reason why Tory's behind bars is because of the Megan Thee Stallion shooting case. Tory was convicted in December 2022 on 3 felony counts connected to the 2020 shooting. He was later sentenced to 10 years in prison. And then Megan testified that Tory shot her, or should I say shot at her feet after they left a party. And the jury believed the prosecution's case, right? And that conviction completely changed Tory's life. Before this case, Tory was one of the most talented artists. I mean, he's still the most talented artist in the game, but being talented and being free, you know, you need both things on your side, right? And whether people like Tory Lanez or not, he can rap, he can sing, he can write hooks, make hits, and move across different sounds. Tory's always had a real fan base. He's always had momentum. He's always been one of those artists who always seemed like he could find a way to stay relevant just because he is so talented. But after the Megan case, everything around his name really changed and it became really controversial. Some people still believe that Tory Lanez is innocent. Some people believe Megan. Some people are just tired of this entire conversation, right? Because it was so controversial. But regardless of where you stand, the reality is that Tory's life changed forever after this particular case. And now, instead of the conversation being about his music, it's about appeals, prison safety, lawsuits, and whether he's even safe behind bars. But the reality is that even though Tory Lanez is in this particular situation here, there are going to be a lot of people who don't feel bad for him, right? Because of the conviction, right? So I feel like in general, people are very split on this particular matter. But we do have to acknowledge this. Tory should just not be in any physical danger while serving his sentence. And I feel like this is just the only right and kind of mature perspective. Because here's the thing, accountability and cruelty are not the same thing. Accountability means if someone is convicted, they serve that sentence. He's doing that right now. Cruelty is acting like once someone is in prison, anything can and should happen to them. And I just don't think that's fair. That is not justice. And I think this is where people need to be very careful, because in this internet era, once people decide they don't like somebody, they start acting like anything bad that happens to that person is automatically deserved. And that's not the case. It's a very dangerous mindset. You can believe Tory Lanez should serve his sentence and still believe the prison system has a responsibility to keep him alive. Because at the end of the day, Tory Lanez is not doing life. He's going to come home in whatever, I think it's like a few years at this point. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2029, he's eligible for parole. And then 2033 was that the actual release date. So you can believe Megan and still believe Tory should not be stabbed or threatened in prison. You can think Tory made terrible decisions and still understand that the sentence is the sentence. That's separate from cruelty. It's not supposed to be get 10 years plus getting stabbed. Get 10 years plus live in fear. It's not supposed to be 10 years plus prison officials allegedly putting you in danger. That is the basic point here. And that's why this story is bigger than Tory. Because if someone who's famous, someone with money, someone with lawyers and media attention is saying he does not feel safe behind bars, imagine how many regular people in prison feel unsafe and nobody hears about it. And so I think Tory's case is basically him advocating for everybody. At the end of the day, you might make some bad decisions and get locked up, but at the same time, you should not be punished more than just the actual sentence. You understand what I'm saying? Now, Tory Lanez, he has a platform, he has fans, he has lawyers, he has media outlets reporting on his filing. He has a name that people recognize, but most people in prison, they don't have that. Most people don't have TMZ or Black and Speaks covering their restraining order request. Most people don't have interviews with all these big media platforms asking them, how are you doing mentally? So if this kind of thing can happen to someone like Tory's, or with Tory's profile, it makes you wonder what happens to people just like regular folks behind prison with no profile at all. So this is not a celebrity issue. I mean, once the state has custody of someone, the state is responsible for that person's safety. It doesn't matter if they're famous. It doesn't matter if the person is hated. It doesn't matter if the person is controversial. If the government locks somebody up, the government has to make sure they survive that sentence. And this entire story is really a reminder of how fast someone's life can change. I mean, Tory Lanez went from being outside, making music, building a fan base, quarantine radio, all that. At one point, I remember he was like one of the most talked about artists, especially around 2020, to now doing interviews from behind bars and talking about how he's afraid for his life. So I think a lot of people just forget that these are real humans behind these headlines. And I'm not saying ignore what he was convicted of, but it does mean you can step back and say this is a very dark situation here that he's facing. And he's dealing with multiple issues here. So whether you believe Tory or not, this is not something you just laugh off or make fun of. The man was already attacked once. He could have died. And it's scary how he has reason to believe that he's still in danger even after all that. I mean, he's serving already a 10-year sentence. Don't try to take out the man and make his life hard for no reason. I'm wishing the best for Tory Lanez, honestly. I think this is a pretty scary situation that he's in. And hopefully, at the very least, he's able to serve the remaining of his sentence without worrying for his safety. But that's personally what I think about this topic. What do you guys think? I mean, pretty crazy situation that Tory's in. I'm sure you agree. So y'all let me know in the comment section below what you think. And of course, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.